So Malignant, which is directed by James Wan, who also co-wrote and directed the first Saw film, and he was very well praised for the Insidious and the Conjuring franchises. James Wan, for me, he's one of my all-time favorite horror directors. It's not so much that his horror movies are always original, they're inventive and unique in their own ways. And that's what I do love about James Wan's direction and just his films in general. He also directed Furious 7, which I thought was kind of an oddball of a film for him to direct, but I liked Furious 7. It's nowhere near the likes of Saw or The Conjurings. I think James Wan is best suited in horror. Oh, he also directed Aquaman, which wasn't a bad film. It was actually pretty decent, set aside Amber Heard being a piece of crap human being, but the film itself was pretty good. So now we get Malignant, which is a story set around a middle-aged woman who basically has premonitions of somebody murdering people, and she has premonitions as they're being murdered, and it's a mystery of why she's experiencing it, who is actually doing it, and that's about it. So for me, Malignant is an intriguing story and premise. I enjoyed the narrative of it. I enjoyed the direction above all. There are a couple set pieces by the end of the film where even outside of some horrific action sequences, it's actually really entertaining. And then there are some action sequences which are just amazingly entertaining in the direction and the camera work. The narrative is written mostly fine. My issues really stem from the editing and just the filmmaking itself. So especially I won't say the entire first act, but at least the first half of the first act, it's stitched together and edited so poorly, it just feels so rushed. Like the first 5 minutes definitely could have been fleshed out and expanded to, say, 10 to 20 minutes long. And because of that sets the stage for murders that happen later in the film. Spoiler. But the problem, though, is because of such a short runtime for the intro, we don't really care. It's not so much knowing. We don't really know anybody except the main characters, but it's more so we just don't care about anybody. We care about the main character and the actress portraying her. We care about her family. We care about her upbringing, her lineage, the history of the murders and everything. But outside of that, the people that get murdered, the things that happen outside of the events, it's not that it's made bad. It's just everything could have been fleshed out for the better. And on top of that, the whole detective side of the film, it was okay, but personally, it kind of made me feel like a rehash of the detective story in the first Saw throughout the entire film. Now, with that being said, in the detective story, there are a couple times where for once in my life, in my career of film watching, I actually laid down, and when I was watching Malignant, and there was an action sequence featuring a detective or two, there were a couple sequences where I literally said to myself, okay, this is actually logically planned out. This makes sense. Like, for example, holding a flashlight in this hand and shooting with your right hand, of course they're not going to have pitch perfect accuracy. That makes sense. When it's a darkly lit room or just like a basement where there are no lights down there, of course you're going to need a flashlight and then a gun, and you're not going to have steady aim. That's just, it's common sense. And I did actually like that in actually a lot of the sequences in Malignant. And then outside of shootouts, when there were actual violent action sequences, there's really one big main one, and it's near the end, but it's done superbly. It's very, very well filmed and very well captured. It's not so much a horror sequence as it is just a couple gore fests stitched together and made well with camera work. It makes sense to the film and the story itself, but in those sequences near the end, don't really expect any horror around it. Not even really an atmosphere. It's really just violent action sequences. Outside of that stitched together scene though, which I'm not bashing it, but that is what it is. It's just a series of action sequences stitched together to keep you going. But outside of that sequence, I think this is, by the end, for the most part, an adequate murder mystery horror with a lot of pacing and editing problems. The direction itself is fine. It keeps you focused on the murder mystery as the central, as well as the lineage of the main character. But the filmmaking process, just like most other Warner Bros. Films, it tends to feel like this was a 2.5 hour film, literally stitched down to an hour and 45 minutes. And in doing so, you can just tell that not so much missing pieces as just rushed. It's kind of like James Wan was trying to direct the film and Warner Bros. Just kept coming in saying, no, let's just quicken it up, pace it up, come on, let's get faster, get quicker. That's really all it seems like. This isn't like, the editing process is not an abomination to the likes of the first DCEU films, but it does have pacing and editing issues, and I believe, yet again, it was Warner Bros. Intervening and telling them to strip out and quicken shots and scenes. So, with that being said, for me, Malignant, I was sitting on a 6 from the beginning to 3/4 of the way through the film, but by the end, there were some parts where they justified some of the bad things, so I'll be fair and I'll say Malignant is a 7 out of 10. Thank you.